Alright, now we're in a whole different group. We have been talking about Lophotrochozoa for a while. Now we're in Ecdysozoa. And I like Ecdysozoa a lot. It's an amazing group, tons of diversity. So let's get to it. We're going to start off with the first one, nematodes. So nematodes are part of Ecdysozoa, and this is a group, Ecdysozoa, that is defined by the presence of some sort of shedding component to them. So they have a cuticle, they shed it. So a cuticle is a tough outer layer to it. And the process of shedding that outer layer, that external coat, is called ecdysis. It's called molting. So this is a group that has all of that. So nematodes shed their coat. Arthropoda are also members, and they all shed their coats too. So you can see in the bottom left, we have that little crayfish-looking thing, and it has shed its external coat. And so we'll talk more about why that's beneficial, but it's pretty unique. And Ecdysozoa in general is pretty amazing. The fact that it has so many known species to it, it's ridiculous. And nematodes by themselves are one of those numerous organisms on the planet. We don't really molt in this sense though. So they have this, they kind of molt the entire layer. We're constantly shedding skin cells, but it's kind of a different process. That's just dead skin cells flying off. This is a more like, okay, we're going to just flat out remove that entire layer all at once. So it's a tougher outer coat. Our skin's not, it's tough, but it's not like that. It's different. Yeah. So roundworms, nematodes. This is a nematode. They are everywhere. So you probably have nematodes on you right now, like no joke. Like there's everywhere. Like you almost cannot escape a nematode. The abundance of them is ridiculous. You can see they're also very closely related to Arthropoda, so they're both in the Ecdysozoa group. And so here's a little note on how abundant nematodes are, a little blurb I found, and it essentially states that if you removed everything from the planet and left nematodes, you could still see the entire planet essentially, because the nematodes are everywhere, like they're all over the place, and so you could see them, and it would be able to see roads, mountains, rivers, other animals, other plants, the outlines of these things. Like we would have an idea of what's going on by just keep leaving nematodes and literally everything else gone, which is insane. But there are everywhere so many nematodes, all environments, all habitats, free living, parasitic, everywhere. So many nematodes. Arguably the most abundant organism on the entire planet are nematodes. So it's just crazy. So yeah, a lot of worms. And note, this is another worm, but a fundamentally different worm. This thing molts. It doesn't have like clitellum. So like using the term worm is awful. Like it's pretty worthless. So that's why it's important to learn some of these other names of this group. Because like, oh, it's a worm. It's like, oh, okay, that tells you nothing. But so you need to know what type of worm it is. So nematodes, though, also known as the roundworms. Estimated number of species is about 1 million, but that's probably even kind of low. Who knows, honestly. But I mean, still 1 million species is insane. Like, seriously, think about it. 1 million species. And when we get to, like, mammals, how many species there are of mammals, like, you'll be like, oh my goodness, like, this is insane. These things are everywhere. And what's weird is like most people never even heard of them before. Like if I were to ask my mom like what's a nematode, she would have no idea. She'd be like, oh, it's a weird type of frog. I was like, no, it's not a weird type of frog. But like most people don't know they exist. It's weird. But they only have a real head region. But they kind of handle something kind of like that. They do show bilateral symmetry. So you can, if you look at one, you can see. I mean, you can't cut that thing more than one way. They have a pseudocoelom, so not a true coelom. They do have a complete digestive tract, so mouth to anus. Variety of lifestyles, so whether it's just moving around eating or being a parasite into a host. Some are incredibly specific. There's some that are like only live in like one specific organ and one specific species, and that's it. So it's an entire nematode, only lives in like the spleen of a rat or something. Extremely, extremely numerous. Like I cannot, just stress that enough how abundant these things are, and just raw individuals. It is ridiculous. They don't have a circulatory system. They're pretty small, so they just breathe through their skin, and that's good enough for them. And they can be found extremely deep in the ocean, so all over the place. And it's likely on the ocean floor. This is the vast majority of them. So many nematodes, and they can lay a ton of eggs a day. I mean, some of them can lay thousands and thousands of eggs in a day. In 1 acre of soil, you can have billions of these things. A good chunk are parasitic. They can be small or large, so some can be, up to, a couple feet in length. They don't have muscles that allow them to get like squinch up like earthworms do. They instead only have muscles that allow them to kind of like flap kind of back and forth. So you saw the vinegar eel video. You saw that thing and how they move, and that's this. So it's unusual, and males are usually smaller. So crazy. And so now we have another cool thing, and so the first multicellular organism to have its genome sequenced was a nematode, and it's C. elegans. You may have heard of that. And so, yeah, that's this thing. And it's commonly used in research purposes. We have its genome, and you have a pretty good idea of how this sucker works, which is pretty cool. Nematodes. So a little fun fact, could be relevant, sticks out, it's unique. There are many examples of parasitic relationships in humans. So you have something called elephantiasis in the bottom right. You can also have heartworm in dogs. So my dog takes heartworm medicine all the time, every month. She has to take it to prevent that from happening. And you can see that is a heart where there's been a ton of worms in there. Like, my goodness gracious, that is so many vessels. And you can obviously understand how that impacts the heart because there's a bunch of worms on that thing. It's gross. It looks like random spaghetti, right? But it's just a worm. It's all creepy. It gives me the willies. I don't like it. Also, hookworm is caused by this too. So, yay, hookworm. It used to be a bigger problem because you get to poop walking around barefoot in the soil and such. But we started digging holes, putting poop in that. And I was like, hey, this works, and so I got rid of hookworm. True story. So it used to be a bigger problem in Florida, and so it would cause anemia over time and iron deficiency. It's not really. It cannot be super fatal. It's just usually in undeveloped countries, you don't necessarily have the ways to treat it, so deal with the anemia or iron deficiency conditions. The dude here in the picture is actually digging an outhouse, so you can try and do your business in there, and I get hookworm that way. Let it spread. That's how these things spread a lot of times, is through poop. So that's fun. It took place back in the 40s, so hey, there's no digging out outhouses right now. And so that's pretty rough. So with elephantiasis, what happens is it blocks lymphatic vessels, and so you have a buildup of fluid in these regions, and then it just gets all messed up. Ooh boy. Also some that are caused by raw pork. You have hemorrhages and muscle pain. So you can get a lot of messed up stuff from nematodes. So they're pretty messed up. So, but they're fascinating. They're cool. Another cool thing about them is you can have a hairworm. And so these can actually get inside of arthropods, shown here, and then what they'll do is, once they're inside, they pretty much just ingest every structure inside of that grasshopper, that cricket. So they'll go in there and just rip it to pieces. And then eventually what you have is a husk of an organism on the outside with a nematode inside, essentially controlling it. And what happens is you use a modification of behavior leading to this thing's demise. And so what's pretty common is they'll cause these to leap into the water, which will lead to their ultimate predation. But once in the water, the nematode can escape, and that's what's happening in the picture on the bottom right. Is somebody took one of these arthropods, these insects, with a nematode in it, and put it in water. And then as soon as it was submerged in water, the worm shot out of there because that's what it wanted to do to continue its life cycle. So they need the water, and so they actually modify the host behavior in a way, leading to them, essentially jumping into hazardous conditions for them and leading to their death. Just the nematode can do what it needs to do. So a little bit of mind control action happening with the nematode. Another fun modification of behavior with nematodes comes with ants. And so there is one species that infects ants and causes them to look and behave differently. And so what happens is you can see the ant on the top right, on the middle picture, with kind of the black butt. Another one has the red butt, and that's where the nematode comes in. And so it's come in, changed it, and then it makes the ant kind of do this little behavior where it kind of displays the berry. And what's happening is birds are trying to eat these berries. They'll go around, eat the ant's butt thinking it's a berry, but it's not. Instead, the bird gets a nice hunk of parasite, and then the parasite continues on and does this little thing. But so it's odd. So we see some nematodes modifying behavior. So really, people are always worried about viruses or bacteria causing zombies. Perhaps it'll be a nematode, and why come that has not been explored in movies yet? Very disappointed by that. Also, when I watched this show I watched when I was a kid called Doug, had an episode. It was a fantastic show called Doug Funny. Starred Doug Funny. But in this show, one of the early episodes, the main character Doug was going out trying to find nematodes, and so he was looking for a frog. But like, what's ironic was he was standing in all this swampy water all day long, and he was undoubtedly surrounded by nematodes. He just didn't know what they were. He was looking for a frog thing. So it's kind of, I don't think that was the point of the episode at all. They were just trying to be jerk to him, but I find it funny. Anyway, that's it for nematodes. So, that was good. 10 minutes. Odd group, super cool, super fascinating. Tons to learn about.